Today on Xtreme 4x4, it was Ian and Jesse's build on a budget. This time, the Jeep is back for stiffer suspension and some trick bolt-ons. Plus, the most extreme off-roading you'll ever see. Hang on for No Rules, No Fear Rock Racing.
Welcome to Xtreme 4x4, where today we're going to dive back into one of our most popular projects, probably because we didn't drop a whole lot of cash into it.
That project is obviously the good old cheap Jeep. Now this 82 CJ7 started out mostly stock.
Now there was absolutely nothing wrong with this Jeep, which was mostly stock until we got our mitts on it. But this show is called Xtreme, isn't it? So stock or even near stock just won't do. For more ground clearance, we did a spring-over axle on both front and rear. We also used TerraFlex revolver shackles to get more articulation. And then we put on an Xtreme Jeep high-clearance steering kit to keep everything above those leaf springs. And of course, we used some Edelbrock Extreme Travel shocks for improved dampening when we take it over the rocks.
Some rock stomper beadlocks welded onto Pro Comp steel wheels and then wrapped them in 35-inch Interco boggers. Then we loaded the whole Jeep up and hit the trail, and that's where a couple issues started to show up.
The first was obviously the clutch. The linkage broke. The engine kept stalling, and all in all, it was just a pain to drive. So we pulled the standard out of the truck and rebuilt a used Torque Command 999 with the TCI rebuild kit and a new torque converter.
Plus, we stripped down the Dana 300 and rebuilt it using a pile of parts from JB Conversions, including their signature Low-Max 4-to-1 gear set.
So today we're gonna get her done. I said get her done. I can't say that. So today we're gonna finish her up. Now most Jeep lovers know the name Hansen Enterprises when it comes to bumpers and rockers and carriers. So we went with their new Narrow Rubicon series with their pre-runner bar on it. This bad boy is made of 3/16 hot rolled steel. It's got its own patented design and it's formatted to fit most popular winch styles at a lower height than most bumpers out there for better airflow to the radiator.
On the rear, we're also installing a Hansen bumper with similar construction to the front with 3/16 plate. It bolts into the stock location with these stiffening pads for extra support, and it has these heavy-duty clevises in the back for helping with your towing. The carrier and rack system simply mount to the spindle.
This carrier also has the ability to hold any size of spare tire that you want. So we went out and got another 35-inch bogger and a steel wheel. Once we weld on the beadlocks, that's going right on the carrier. Plus, it can hold a bunch of cool tools, like this Max axe. Not only do you get an axe, but you get all the other fun tools like picks and shovels and hoes and fun.
Now the carrier itself truly is a carry-all. It's got provisions to hold the axe in the back. It's got a spot for a high-lift jack, and these little platforms can hold jerry cans or gear bags or whatever you need.
To match the rest of our Jeep, we'll use do-it-yourself beadlocks by welding a ring to the outside of the steel wheel.
While Jesse tries to put the tire on, I'll press the studs into the flange. Then mount it to the rack.
That's all you get.
Can I smell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please?
You can get it set just like that. Then you gotta work your way around.
If he gets it.
There you go. Put the ring on.
And the best part about this rack is that it comes complete with a bottle opener.
Root beer. We'll be right back.
Up next, it's a mix of Baja and boulders, where all cones are tossed out along with the rules. Full throttle extreme rock racing after the break.
Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4. It's time for us to take you off-road, where we all tend to break what we build and have a blast doing it.
And this week's event is possibly the most extreme yet, where the element of danger comes only second to the adrenaline rush.
Gathering in the shadow of Colorado's largest auto graveyard, these pioneers are competing in off-road's newest sport, extreme rock racing.
It's pretty extreme. It's like nothing you've ever seen.
Rock racing is trail running. It is not cone dodging. It is actually wheeling again. You pick your own lines, but you're doing it at speed.
It's the skill of rock crawling with the action of Baja.
It's not 10 minutes to get around one cone, you know, it's go, go, go. You either make it, break it, or roll.
Fed up with the ever-growing rule book in competition rock crawling, the founder of the XRRA had a solution.
And there are no rules in rock racing.
And that's just fine with these rock crawling anarchists.
I hate rules.
We don't like cones and we like speed. That's what we like around here.
It's a brutal, brutal sport.
No cones, no penalties for backups, no penalties for stops. This ain't no sissy rock crawling.
Making 4 runs through the quarter-mile loop track, they're in a constant showdown against the clock.
It's all on the stopwatch. Once your time starts and you don't finish till you're done, and at the end of the day you add all your times up, and that's your time. I don't miss the rock crawling competitions. It's too slow for me.
This isn't a rock crawl, this is rock racing.
This sport has broken the chains of oppression and set the drivers free.
It's pretty much wide open throttle.
We're really motoring, hitting the rev limiter at 7,500 RPM, going just as fast as we can go. In some of the straightaways, we'll hit 30, 35, sometimes 40 miles an hour.
For 10 years they told me, hey, you drive with too heavy a foot, you need to learn how to crawl. And so I spent 10 years learning how to crawl and got that dialed in. Now everybody wants to go race, you know?
Sometimes you get done with a run, you can't even take your helmet off. Your hands are shaking so hard with adrenaline.
After years on the pro rock crawling circuit, JT Taylor made the jump to rock racing and hasn't looked back.
No, I don't miss the rock crawling competitions. People that get into the rock racing are more into the adrenaline, they're more into hitting the throttle hard and playing hard. And that's why we do it, we love it.
In order to be competitive, JT's first upgrade was under the hood.
Running a 2000 Corvette LS1. It's been pumped up. I got a Z06 cam, 03 intake and injectors, and a larger throttle body. All the books tell me it's about 410 horsepower. You need a good high horsepower motor out here because you're hitting it really hard and getting the RPMs up and just really motoring. The rig only weighs about 2,800 pounds. So when you jump on the skinny pedals, you go.
This isn't Talladega, so he needs more than power.
Gearing is a fine line. You have to hit a happy medium to where you can still have the speed, but when you get to an obstacle, have enough gear to get you up it. The way I set this one up, I'm running 4 88s with Detroits front and rear, and I'm running a 3.8 Atlas transfer case with a 2-speed Chevy Power Glide transmission.
On JT's first run at Colorado, he proved that no matter how well a rig is thought out, rock racing equals carnage.
Brutal. It's really hard on equipment, but man, it's fun.
His third run went even worse.
Broke the rear link, rear drive shaft came apart. Time to drink beer?
JT's fans didn't seem to mind his 13th place finish.
It's great. Kids love these things. They like the noise, they like the flashiness, the big tires slinging everything. So it's pretty fun when they come up, say, that's cool, man, I like your rig. It's pretty neat.
See, now that's what I'm talking about, going as fast as you can with 0 rules.
Well, even though they have no rules, there's obviously some guidelines if you're going to get into rock racing. Safety is a main concern, and now you have to sign the big waiver, of course. And starting this year, window nets.
He'll never get over the window nets, ever.
Love window nets.
How did I know you were going to say that?
Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4. As you can see, we're well underway with our Project Cheap Jeep, fixing all the things that came up on our trail ride at a Teleco OHV. We've already rebuilt an automatic transmission and installed it, put new gears in the transfer case, and of course, great set of new bumpers.
Now there's just a few more things we need to tackle before this thing is ready to go back out on the trail. The very first day we had it out, the U-bolt stripped, so we had to weld the nuts back on to keep the axle in place. But then the drive shaft broke and our day was over.
Now, there was a whole host of reasons why that drive shaft broke. It could have been the position of the tire trying to climb over the rock it was on. It could have been the axle wrap from the whole vehicle bouncing up and down. But the main reason was the fact that we did the spring over, we left in the weak stock springs.
Now that's not to say that you can't use your stock springs on an SOA, but remember they may be softer than you want and they may become unpredictable. So we're going to be using these Quadratec RE springs. They give you an 1.5 inch lift and they're made specifically for a spring over. On our CJ, the new springs are wider than our stock springs, so we'll need to make new upper spring plates.
By bending the front and rear lip, it keeps the spring plate from distorting when bolting it up. To go with our springs, we also got an install kit with new U-bolts, washers, and nuts.
You know, the really great thing about building a Jeep is the multiple companies that are out there to help you feed your addiction, like Quadratec.
And we got a couple things to finish this Jeep off today from Quadratec. A set of tube doors just to make it a little more comfortable in the Jeep. And of course, a bikini top to keep the sun off us while we wheel.
And the nice thing is they're pre-bent and fit in the stock hinge locations. But when you're building a custom roll cage, nothing is pre-bent. This Jeep already has great protection for the driver and passenger, but none for the backseat passengers.
So we decided to bend up some tube to make this a true four-seater again. Cheat yours down the tube, go closer to you.
You need to push back further.
Put your end where you want it. Get in there and check for headroom first. Plus, we'll tie our seats into the roll cage because, well, it's just a good thing.
Now we use DOM steel tubing on the roll cage for CJ, but there's a lot of different metal options out there. So stay tuned and we'll tell you all about them.
If you're watching this show, chances are you've spent some time with some steel and a welder, maybe building something for your truck, like tube fenders like we put on our cheap Jeep here, or a full roll cage, or possibly an entire tube chassis. And if you're gonna do something like that, sooner or later you gotta go shopping for some tubing.
Tubing is always a topic that seems to be confusing, but basically there's two common types that are used in off-road. You have carbon steel and you have chromoly. Now the weakest and the cheapest is welded seam carbon steel. Now it's weak because it's rolled from a flat piece of steel and then welded together. This is good for things like bed racks and roof racks, but that's about it with its tensile strength of 45,000 PSI. And cost, it's about $2 a foot depending upon what kind of size you get.
Which isn't a bad price, but if you want to stay with carbon steel and get a little bit stronger for a little bit more money, the choice is going to be DOM. This is steel that is turned into tubing when it's at its molten state. What a mill does is superheat the metal and basically draw it over a die to shape it into a tube. That's where it gets its name, drawn over mandrel. Now this stuff is strong for carbon steel, 65,000 PSI tensile strength, and most importantly, just a little bit more than welded seam, about $3 a foot.
Now DOM is great for things like roll cages and rock sliders and bumpers on almost any trail or comp rig. But if you're looking at getting into some competitive off-roading, like racing or serious rock crawling, you're going to want to take a look at chromoly.
Although it is more expensive, chrome moly's strength, about 100,000 psi tensile and 180,000 psi after heat treating, is what makes it some of the strongest tubing available. Now it comes in two different variations, 4130 and 4340. Now this is 4130, the most common, and the condition is normalized. Now it also is available in annealed. Now the annealed tubing is softer, it's easier to work with, but it doesn't achieve its full strength until it's actually heat treated in a furnace. So you can only make parts like maybe small spindles or control arms that can actually fit into the size of your furnace. A full chassis, not going to happen. So you're going to be using normalized tubing. Now, it is $5 a running foot, so it's a lot more than DOM. But the way it was described to me was like this. If you build a carbon steel chassis and you wreck that chassis, the whole thing is basically garbage. It's going to be so twisted and bent, you might as well just throw the whole thing away. You build a chrome moly chassis, you wreck that chassis, you can go in and just cut out the bad sections. This tubing is strong enough to basically keep the shape of the car. You just have to replace the section that's wrecked. So if you're going to wreck your vehicle a lot, like off-road racing, this stuff, it's going to save you money in the long run.
There's a couple common misconceptions about chrome moly. One of them is that it's lighter. It's not. It's just stronger with a thinner wall thickness. So in essence, the whole piece is lighter, but the material itself is not any lighter than DOM. The other misconception is how to weld it. Now yes, TIG welding allows for a more controlled heat area, but it's not any stronger than MIG. You can MIG weld chrome moly, but you're going to have to remember to get your steel up to temperature as quickly as possible and move as quickly as possible to keep that heat effect zone down. One more thing is that you're going to be using your ER70 filler rod unless you're going to heat treat your metal.
One signature piece when it comes to a chrome moly chassis is flared holes. Now these holes are made with a set of dimple dies, and we got this set from Light Racing. It all starts with a hole cut into chrome moly sheet. Now we're using a hole saw to cut this hole, which is fine, but if you have the ability, the better thing to do is to have it actually laser cut. The flared hole die is placed in the press and forced together. Now not only does this lighten the overall weight of the sheet, it actually adds strength to the panel because of the shape of the flare.
Now it should go without saying that you will need to match your rod ends and your uniball receivers to the right kind of tubing. Chrome moly pieces to the chrome moly tubing. These items come from Specialty Products Light Racing. They're made of the highest quality chrome moly and are available for all different sizes of tubing and rod ends.
And that's about it for today. That's a lot of information on tubing, and the next time we have the CJ in here, we're actually going to load it up on the trailer and then hit the road for a road test, but we got to finish, obviously, another project because we don't like to share driving.
No, I have to drive.
But I have to drive as well.
But I have to drive.
Either way, look at my flared hole.
Hey.
It's flary.
That's pretty nice, huh?
That's the maximum amount of flare.